Being in the United States Army, especially on active duty, it's not like a 9 to 5 job. If you're going into the Army and expecting it to just be a normal job once you're done with initial training, it's not quite like that. There are definitely some days that are longer than others, but hell, there's even some days that are shorter than others. What you'll get a lot of times just depends on what's going on at the unit, right? If you are preparing to go on a deployment, whether it's a combat deployment, a training deployment, then that definitely kind of throws things off to where, yeah, it can end up resulting in long days. If you are getting ready to go to the field, same kind of thing. But if you're not preparing to go to the field anytime soon or on a deployment, hell, sometimes you end up with short days. I mean, I will say that maybe, those days are kind of few, but sometimes, depending on what's going on, so are some of the long days sometimes too. You are starting your day off early, right? For most units, at least anyways. I mean, there are some units out there that kind of do their own thing, right? But for the most part, the typical standard is that you're going to be doing physical fitness at 6:30 in the morning, right? Doing that for an hour long, have a little bit of a break to kind of get some breakfast, change out of your physical fitness uniform, and then starting work at 9. So yes, you do kind of work 9 to 5-ish, but you started before that because you did physical fitness and you're not guaranteed to get off at 5. I would say, like, in my time in the Army, definitely, like, if you're getting ready to go to the field, you're getting ready for a deployment, there's a lot of things that are going on, sometimes unnecessary things that cause you to have to work late at night when you probably didn't need to work late at night, but it sometimes happens. It does make it difficult to kind of plan things around that because you don't always know if it's going to be a long day or not going to be a long day. You sometimes could end up in situations that people just always hate, with last minute, taskings, last minute things coming up where maybe you have a mediocre day, maybe a very slow day type of thing, and then all of a sudden it's getting close to, the time when normally you get off. Maybe it's like 4:30, maybe it's 5 type of thing in the evening, and then all of a sudden we got a bunch of stuff to do, and you're left questioning, like, why on earth didn't we do this earlier when we didn't really have that much to do? That stuff is tough. That's sometimes, the sergeant major, decides that has to get done, and it took a while to get that information to flow, or maybe they did like last minute be like, oh crap, we forgot to do this. This is something we need to do. But whatever the case is of why it happens, it sucks. And sometimes that does result in maybe you don't get off at 4:35 and now you're getting off at 6, 7, 8, whatever the case might be. You're going to hear stories from a lot of different veterans as far as times when they did have to work late. I will say it's not an all the time thing. It happens, but it's not an all the time thing. And the times that some people got off are definitely going to vary based on what was going on. If you were getting ready to go on a deployment, getting ready to go to the field, yeah, sure, it can be pretty late where you're not getting off work until 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night, maybe midnight sometimes, right? But if you're not preparing for the field or a deployment or something like that, and you're still getting off late, that's horrible. That shouldn't happen. There's no excuse for that happening when you're not preparing to go to the field or something like that. So that's just poor leadership that's causing you to have to stay late. But if it's because you have to get things accomplished before the field, before deployment, it's understandable. It's going to happen. There's a lot of busy things, a lot of moving parts that have to happen, especially things with like packing up connects, getting vehicles loaded up on a railhead, getting equipment ready, making sure we have all the stuff that we need, whatever the case might be. I will say that, I probably didn't have it that often that we went really late at night. There were definitely times where, sure, maybe most commonly we get off at 4:35, around that kind of ballpark. But there was certain days that maybe that got stretched a little bit because our platoon sergeant was at a meeting. There was a lot of things getting put out, and then we didn't get to get out of there until 5:30, maybe 6. There were some times where, we didn't get off until, let's say, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock. Very rarely did it go real late. There were a few times where, especially we're preparing to like deploy to Iraq and we have to get things done, where we were working all the way up until like 11, 12 o'clock at night type of thing to get stuff done. And then they're like, hey, we're going to break. Maybe we'll skip PT the next morning and then come in at 9 o'clock. Not that great. I mean, this helps a little bit, especially if you get off at 12 to not have to go and turn around and be back here at 6:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, because at that point you almost feel like just sleeping in your car kind of a thing. But, nonetheless, they usually will try to work with you if you have good leadership at least. Of course, there's veterans out there that be like, man, I got like maybe 2 minutes of free time and the rest of the time was working, whatever. There are definitely stories of times that sucked where you had to work real hard, you had to work really late type of thing, but it was not an all the time type of thing. It's moments here in the Army where you're going to have to work a little bit late. But then there's even times where I got cut loose early. I remember some times where, we didn't have a whole lot going on. So they would tell us, hey, take off, have your phones available, because if I call you, I need you to be here, right? So maybe go hang out in the barracks, whatever. go chill out. And if I don't call you, then cool. If I don't call you at like 4:35, you're good. Nothing to worry about. And so there were times where maybe I'd only be working up until like 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they'd cut us loose or something like that. But that one wasn't a whole often type of thing. It happened here and there. The most common one was usually that, you do the normal 6:30 physical fitness, getting done at 7:30, having from 7:30 to 9 to get some breakfast and shower and change and everything, being back at work at 9, and then work, lunch break somewhere's in there, maybe an hour, maybe hour and a half, somewhere's around there, and then being done by 4:35 was the most common one, but that wasn't always the case. And it's really hard to predict what you will get, right? I can't say that that's going to be the majority of what you're going to get, or you're going to most of the time get let loose early, or most of the time you're going to work late. It's always a changing thing depending on like what's going on. If you're getting ready for deployments, then that definitely, adds factors in there that can definitely make it to where you're going to get off late. And if you're not going on deployments, but you're still staying late, that's probably the leadership that probably is not managing the time properly type of thing. But otherwise, I would expect that most of the time when you don't have crazy stuff going on, you're probably getting off at like 4:35, somewhere around there. And I know there's people just dying to type in the comments, 4:35, I never got off until 7:30, 8, 9, 10, 12 if I was lucky. Whatever, it doesn't happen all the time. It happens, but not all the time. Being in the Army, you're not hourly. Not really even salary. It's typically kind of the similar, to like being paid salary, because it doesn't really matter how many hours you work. You're always getting paid the same, whether you only worked a couple hours or you worked nearly 24 hours, because that can happen too. If you get CQ or staff duty, we have to sit behind a desk for 24 hours. But, it's not the same as like hourly or salary. You just kind of always have to be kind of ready and available. I do remember times when that would kind of make things hard to plan for. You wanted to go do something after work. You wanted to go hang out with some friends and do some stuff, and then you got stuck working late type of thing. It definitely does throw things off, but it didn't happen all the time, right? It was just here and there, some moments. Now, of course, on like a deployment, it varies as well, right? Combat deployments, sure, there was a lot of times where I was busy as hell and I didn't have very much free time to myself, and working late nights or early mornings and working a lot of hours. If it's a training deployment, maybe a little bit less often. It depends on what you're kind of doing during that training deployment, because there probably is some factors that can throw in there to make it where you have long days on a training deployment. But commonly, training deployments, maybe not quite as crazy as, of course, you would expect from combat deployment type of thing. But nonetheless, in the comment section down below, my veterans out there, what's your average time that you would get off work? I know there's going to be some people that exaggerate some because they want to try to make them seem more hardcore. Try to refrain yourself from trying to be cooler than you want to be, or whatever the case is. I know damn well you didn't do every single day until midnight, okay? What was the average? Okay, what was the average time that you typically would usually get done on an average day? If it wasn't preparing for a field problem, wasn't preparing for a deployment, just a normal day, what was your average that usually you were getting let loose to go home if you were on active duty? For me, like I said, I would say most likely usually around 4:35 was usually the average. If we weren't preparing for deployment, weren't preparing for a field problem, 4:35 was pretty much my common kind of average one. For my individuals out there that are not veterans, maybe not serving in the military yet, or don't plan to, whatever the case is, make sure you leave some comments down below for the algorithm. Again, we're gonna keep up with this maybe tradition of leave me your favorite emoji or tell me a little mini story using nothing but emojis, and see if I can decipher it, or anybody else can kind of decipher your story from emojis. Now, if you do want to learn a little bit more about like free time when it comes to combat deployments, well, I got a video right here that you can check out. So check out that video to learn about free time on deployments. Make sure you're following me on social media, links in the description box down below. Subscribe. I'm Christopher Chaos. I'll see you next time. See ya.